Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are continuing with the film journey, and this time we have the third member of the Rad Pack. We have Justin at Movie Watch Daily. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I was gonna say that, obviously when I like initially I've known Garrett for a second. And and just interacting with him a couple times in different spaces, and then I'm just like, all right, well, and then I got to talk to Mel, and now I got to talk to Justin. And I was like, and then I'm just,
Yeah.
I just love the chemistry with all you guys. Obviously, that's as together, but I'm really curious about each of you individually in terms of what you guys do. And I was going to say, I know you guys all had separate spaces before all this thing.
Mhm.
With Movie Watch Daily in particular. I was going to say, I'm excited to talk to you and hear more about what's going on. So
Yeah, hell yeah. I love those guys. My Rad Pack homies, man. I'm maybe we'll get into it or whatever, but ever since I linked up with those dudes, man, it's like really brought like a whole like a community aspect to all of the like the content creators that we have in this little group. And yeah, those dudes are awesome, man. And then I get to meet all kinds of other cool people through YouTube, man. It's awesome. I love doing this. So I'm
yeah,
glad to be here. Thanks for having me, dude.
yeah, no problem, man. I was gonna say, and you finally actually got to meet them physically too, not that long ago, right?
Yeah, that was amazing. We there was a film fest in Kansas City, the Panic Fest, which is just so incredible. Like I've caught movies here and there because it's every year, and you can buy individual tickets and stuff to see random movies. But this was the first year that I bought the full pass, so I could see all the movies, just kind of come and go. We all got the pass, all of us Rad Pack guys, and it was just man, it was such an amazing. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done because I got to meet those guys, meet the Rad Pack, my Rad Pack homies, and then see all these amazing movies. We met Barbara Crampton and Scout Taylor Compton and Joe Lynch and Spider One and see all these incredible movies, man. It was such a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that
I
was
mean,
awesome.
those rare moments though. I mean, like that's what's cool is like these I was gonna mention, like it was like a rare thing, but I feel like it's becoming more and more common because I feel like a lot of us are starting to, connect. And luckily we're not that far away. So
Yeah.
of course, anytime I'm over yonder, I might, hit you up and be like, what you doing? So
Well, I keep telling everybody, man, like I'm trying to get people to come to Kansas City for this that Panic Fest. So man, if you're around next year for Panic Fest, I highly recommend it because we were able to see where we were able to see Evil Dead Rise early. We saw Spider One's new movie. We saw this amazing 4K, the restoration of From Beyond, like in
ooh,
the theater with Barbara Crampton in there. She did a little introduction. It was just so amazing.
oh,
So, but
jealous. And
yeah, it was so
it's
cool, man.
and it wasn't that far away too. I missed out. So
Yeah, it'll be every year, man. So you can catch it.
yeah, for sure. I was gonna say we got some good, some good locales too, so that should be good.
Yeah.
So well, I know before we jump into this, I'd actually like, to ask kind of, how you got started in the space in general and like how this kind of came about. With Movie Watch Daily, was that like the first iteration of kind of, your space in on YouTube?
Yeah. I started at the channel. I started Movie Watch Daily, or I may have even before I even had the channel had a name. I had posted a couple random videos like me playing a guitar solo and then this random unboxing of a Ginger Snaps, this really cool German media book set. But I didn't show my face and or anything like that. And there was just like two videos on my channel for the longest time. And then, like many people, when that pandemic hit, I was still kind of working, but my hours were I stopped working for a small period of time. Like I wasn't out of work for a long time, but having that happen, I did start. That's kind of when I started like wanting to do actual content because I had wanted to do YouTube for so long, watching people like the Flick Pick, John Flickinger and Chris Stuckman and
Yep.
Cool Duder and Wet Movie One and Pizzal and Planet CHH and all these really cool channels. But I just never got my ass in gear to do it, and then I finally just decided to do it, and then started mainly focusing on was primarily just like hauls, like Blu-ray hauls, physical media stuff, talking about Blu-rays and stuff like that. Just kind of honestly mimicking the content that I had watched because I hadn't found my own voice, and it took a minute to do that. But once I started like having fun with creativity and doing skits and bringing my little dog into my videos and stuff like that. It just became a really good creative outlet. It was also at the same time that I had just gotten sober. from alcohol and stuff because I just like was a mess for years, and I got on the straight and narrow, and it was just like the perfect time. The pandemic hit. I was like freshly sober, and I just needed a an outlet to like for my creativity to pass the time to kind of keep myself out of trouble. And then it just kind of went from there, and I started to meet all these amazing content creators and meeting people like Haunted Hippie and Sledgehammer Horror, and then Garrett and Mel and Mid-Level Media, Kenny from Mid-Level Media, and all these really cool content creators. And it just kind of happened like super organically. Staunch TV is somebody I linked up with who I highly recommend his content. He was one of the first content creators that I actually started talking to and collabing with, like outside of just my own channel. He has a really cool channel. Like he digs into old TV shows and 80s and 90s movies, a lot of 90s stuff. Um, and that pretty much brings us to right here. And then I linked up through there was a few. I guess I don't know. The time flies. I have no aspect
Concept
of
of time.
time.
Me
Yeah, it's
neither.
like crazy. Like especially after 2020. But like a couple of years ago, there was this horror YouTuber of the month contest where people would nominate each other. You had to have under 1,000 subs or under 500 subs or something. It was a way to kind of highlight smaller channels. So one person would win, and then they would nominate three or four other channels. And I was nominated, and I actually won, which was really cool. It was back when my channel had maybe 500 or 600 subscribers. And that's when I nominated. I had just kind of discovered Mel and Garrett's channel, and then I nominated them. And that thing has gone on to a life of its own. I don't even know where that thing is right now. But somewhere the horror YouTuber of the month, I assume, is still going on, although it's years out. I don't know where that thing is. But after we did that, we started DMing each other, and then we are like, Garrett kind of was the brainchild of the Rad Pack. He had this kind of concept, and he liked, I guess, just me and Mel's vibes, and brought us in for the Rad Pack. And now we've got the Rad Pack has its own channel, and that's getting ready to hit 1,000 subs, which is so fucking cool. And we're doing all these amazing interviews with Matt Ryan Tobin, and we're working on a couple of other things. But it's really been a whirlwind of just collaboration and content creation and just coming together through movies and cinema, and it's just been incredible.
Yeah, I was gonna say I
Sorry, that
like
was a very long-winded answer. Sorry.
well, I was gonna say first, cheers on sobriety.
Oh, thank you, dude.
I'm glad that this was a good outlet for that. And
Yeah.
second, I like how you said organically. I
Mm.
think that's true. It's weird how all of the pandemic kind of made this more of a interaction type of thing, or at least
Mhm.
way where we can collaborate and like be in our own community, because we were losing community in the real world, I suppose, with that.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah, it's
cool.
a good point.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's kind of coming to this place that I'm excited to see all that growth and see where it goes next. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know that you had just mentioned it, but for people who are watching right now, be sure and down in the links down below to follow Justin in all those places. We're going to do that again at the end, but all that fun stuff before we jump into this film journey. So, well, I always like to ask, before, sometimes I do this and sometimes I don't, but what have you been like currently watching lately?
Um,
What have you been watching?
Man, I've been going to the movies a lot lately. Because I was kind of my movie watch daily is like my main channel, but it was becoming kind of dormant after I started my second channel, like with Rad Pack and the Dead Couch, which is mainly like a physical media and collecting channel. Like I started doing heavy Rad Pack content, and the Dead Couch and Movie Watch started to kind of fall on the wayside. So I was like, in the past month, I'm like, I've got to start really hammering content for that channel. So I started going to see every new movie. So I've seen a lot in this past month. I saw Talk to Me, which I loved. I thought it was a really, really well made Australian horror movie. Did you see that yet?
I haven't. I cannot wait.
It's really cool, man. You're gonna dig it. I saw Cobweb, which it was just kind of okay for me. Barbie, I went and saw, which I did a whole review about, which
I
I
saw
didn't
that.
love as I didn't love as much. I wanted to love that movie so much. I saw Oppenheimer. I love that. The Rad Pack just did this massive episode on like 80s and 90s extreme sports movies. So we were
Yeah.
watching movies like Airborne and BMX Bandits and Rad and all these gnarly like BMX and rollerblade movies. And I've been watching, God damn, I've been watching so much shit. I've been digging through my Vinegar Syndrome haul lately. I've watched Really cool one that stood out for me was Eat Brains Love, which was from the director of Idle Hands, which is kind of cool, like zombie romance story, which is really cool. Man, I've been watching a lot, dude. I've been diving into a bunch of shit lately.
Yeah, I was gonna say I at least I knew about the ones you've been going to theaters because I know you've been doing a lot of that on the channel and whatnot.
Mhm.
But no, it's cool that you have a lot of you're stretched thin, but like hopefully in a fun
Mhm.
way.
Yeah,
Watching all these different types of movies, like watching Vinegar Syndrome titles,
yeah.
along with things you can do, with modern stuff. So it's
Hmm.
nice to diversify that. I always like being like it's like I used to before the pandemic, obviously, I used to go to the theater like literally a couple times a week.
Hmm.
And would watch movies all the time. I mean, I know you guys used to have an Alamo Draft House there, but we
Yeah,
have one down here, and that's pretty much like once that became a thing, that's where I went all the time. So,
yeah.
but yeah, then it spoiled me watching movies. So I'm like, why stop and just keep going?
Yeah,
So
I miss my Alamo. And that's kind of why like also like I watch so many different kinds of movies. That's kind of why I wanted to split my channels up, like have Movie Watch Daily be kind of more for modern-ish movies like after 2000 and then like a lot of the new stuff in the theaters. And Dead Couch kind of represents at least what I wanted to do was to be able to diversify my content and have like Dead Couch be all the 80s, 90s gnarly stuff where I can talk about I just don't know if like on my main channel where I'm talking about like Oppenheimer and Barbie, if I just throw a wrench in the content line and throw like a trauma movie in there. It's just like a different branding. So I'll
yeah,
save like Poultrygeist and Toxic Avenger for the Dead Couch and then talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer on Movie Watch. But yeah, my movie taste is all over the place. I love horror. That'll always be my main genre, but I love so many different kinds of movies so much.
yeah. I mean, I get the headspace of like splitting that into those spaces. So,
Yeah.
I've always had I mean, when I first started, I started doing like you said, Chris Stuckman, flick pick type of like movie reviews, and that's kind of what I was doing first, and then it eventually evolved into more physical media kind of discussions for my own thing, and then obviously this thing has picked up over the years. So I've been doing this film journey series for quite some time, just highlighting
Hmm.
people in the community. So it's all over the place, but I you give me some good ideas. Maybe I should change something, or I have jonesing around, which is what I say at the end of these things. Like I'm not jonesing around.
Yeah.
So that could be a thing. I don't know, but
Well, that's why, like, when you start a channel and like, especially if you've never like, when I started my channel, I had never owned a camera before. I had never edited a minute of footage. I knew nothing about stuff. So you can start one way and have an idea of like exactly how you want to do, but it's just going to evolve. Like as you learn how to make better videos, as you learn how to edit, as you kind of become interested in different things, your content just kind of evolves. So if you need to switch things up or change things or you want to start a channel, just like I always say in my videos, man, like stay weird, do whatever the fuck you want. You only live once. So if you want to talk about this, you want to talk about that, do whatever you want to do. Sometimes you may need to, like I did, I felt like I needed to start a second channel, but um our interests and our art evolves. Everybody changes over time. So
yeah, and I think that's a good point too, because I mean you're right. I think people do change, and like our movie watches, like movie taste, I guess, changes quite a
mhm.
bit too. Like I mean, I remember used to hating Social Network back when it first came
Yeah,
out, and then maybe like it took me a decade to be like, all right, I think I like this movie. So
yeah.
so it's weird, but I love the journey, and I hope everyone with their channels and the people who are watching this as well, who don't even have channels or just movie lovers too, are doing something similar. So
Hmm.
well, are you ready for the film journey?
Let's do it, man.
All right, man. Well, the first question I always like to ask is, what was your earliest movie memory, or like your earliest iteration of interacting with like movies?
Yeah. Um, this kind of comes, we just did this whole thing on the Rad Pack, which was like a challenge, which was the Rad 9 movies that made us.
I
And
did
I feel
that.
like all those movies, yeah, I know you did. It was so cool seeing all these, so many, it's just crazy how that thing kind of spread. But the movies that hit me the most, although they may not be my like favorite movies now, the movies that really got me into cinema are those really early movies that I remember just like sitting down at my grandma's house and things like that when you're a kid it seems so magical to put that VHS tape in the VCR and watch it. And those type of movies for me were movies like Wizard of Oz and Sword in the Stone and all of those type of I'm forgetting my list, or I wish I had my list in front of me right now, but um, they kind of fall in those areas of the kids movies. I remember The Wizard of Oz for whatever reason really making a big impression on me. And I think it kind of I liked it was so weird and
Hmm.
so odd, and it had songs and it had stuff that scared me when I was a kid. And I love that. I also have movies like I think I had Captain Ron was on my movies that made me. I think it was um, those movies that I just kind of watched over and over again. I wish I should have wrote down my Red Nine list because now I'm slipping. Some of them are slipping my mind, but Wizard of Oz is a big one for whatever reason.
Do you remember how old you were when you first saw that?
Oh God, man, probably I had to have been maybe 8 or 9, something like that. Super young, maybe even younger.
Huh.
Yeah.
Do you remember like where was it just like at home or like on a VHS or like on a TV or
My
something?
grandma had it on a VHS. My grandma would go to Walmart or Best Buy or these random stores, and she would just oftentimes she wouldn't even know what she was buying. She would just like tell the person like, "I need some movies for my grandkids to watch," and they'd give her a bag full of movies, and just whatever she brought was what we watched. So she even had copies of movies like My Boyfriend's Back and like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all these weird like movies that we maybe probably shouldn't have been watching at such a young age, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what made us, right? So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, was your grandma pretty integral to like your, I guess, love of this thing?
She liked movies. She really did. I think she was more into like crime thrillers. I remember I think it was more that she wanted to see a movie, but she was stuck with us. So we ended up seeing what was I'm forgetting the name of the movie. The Diane Lane Richard Gere movie where she cheats on him with the guys, the Adrian Lane movie.
Uh,
Uh,
it's
you know
escaping
what
my
movie I'm
mind.
talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, took me and my cousin to see that movie when we were like, I don't know, 12 years old. I thought it was awesome. But yeah, my whole family's always been into movies. My uncle was probably like the most integral in like showing me like um movies that kind of made me in my later years with all the horror stuff, which we can get into.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's
But
pivot to that. I mean, what were some of those like first movies that like kind of just opened your eyes there?
my uncle was showing me movies like The Exorcist and Pink Flamingos and like John Waters stuff and really gnarly shit when I was like 12 or 13 years old. Psycho, I remember watching Psycho for the first time with him. The Birds, all these incredible films. But I remember the Exorcist really did a number on me because I saw that when I was really young. But I just loved it, and I realized like, oh, like movies can be wild and they don't have to be like kids movies and stuff, you know?
Hmm. Shoot, I was gonna say that reminds me. My dad watched The Exorcist like when it came out, and he was really young. I think he was born in the late 50s. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking of like because that came out in the early 70s, right? So, but I remember it being on TV like uncensored is like kind of what things were back then. And he's been in a small town, so
Yeah.
childhood trauma and The Exorcist. I feel like there's a lot of people out there who've seen The Exorcist way too early.
Yeah. It was like one of those I think because it was such a classic in our probably like our parents' age that they liked it, so kids got showed, you I don't have any kids, but I imagine if I did have kids, I'd show them the stuff that I love,
Hmm.
regardless of whether it may be like appropriate for them or not. You just want to like share that with them. So I think that's what the deal was with like my uncle showing me shit like Pink Flamingos.
I was gonna say you went the John Waters route. Like you went straight from like it's almost like I mean you can't watch. I'm trying to think of something really cheesy like My Date with or Interview with the Vampire
Yeah,
or thinking of something like Disney Channel horror movie like Halloween Town or
yeah,
something. But no, you went straight
uh-huh,
for John Waters. You know.
yeah, and I loved it, man. I never felt like I never felt traumatized by it. I just thought it was fucking cool. Like I never really got scared. The earliest memory of me actually becoming scared in a movie was I remember sneaking out of my parents' house, or not of my parents' house, out of my bedroom and trying. I always used to get up in the middle of the night and try to like watch TV when my parents were asleep so that they wouldn't know what I was watching, and I caught a super gnarly like devil scene in Legend with Tim Curry being all like super satanic, and it scared the shit out of me. And I like had to run to my. I was so scared I couldn't go back to bed, and I had to like tell on myself and go to my parents' room and say, "I'm scared. Watch this movie. I know I shouldn't have done it, but now I can't go to bed." That was the first time I ever remember being scared by a movie was Legend, but
Oh, well, I
maybe
mean,
who I am today.
rightfully so. I mean, as a kid too. I mean, that makeup is wonderful on him. So, I mean,
Dude, it's so insane.
yeah, no, I need to get that Arrow video edition. I don't have it. So,
Yeah, it's
but
beautiful.
yeah. I was gonna say, pivoting into like that kind of that teenage years of things. So, I know you said your uncle had like kind of got you on that path. Was it kind of did that like proliferate everything kind of as you were getting older?
It was a combination of that and HBO, to be honest with you. Like I was lucky enough to have like I didn't have all the channels, but there was a period of time where we had like HBO and Showtime and those type of things, and that's like where I really started to like seek out movies. Because I don't know how old you are, but I
Early 30s.
back in the day. Oh, okay, so you may not remember. Do you remember TV guides growing
Yeah,
up?
oh
Like
yeah, oh yeah,
TV guides? Okay,
yeah. I
so
remember
like
highlighting those.
yeah, dude, that was my shit. Like that was my Bible. They came every week, and I would get in there and I would look like because I had the VCR that you could program to record like overnight. It was a really cool thing because you'd have your VHS tape, and you could there was different settings of how much like you could put on it. There was like you could record either 2 hours, 4 hours, or 6 hours. When you record 6 hours worth of movies, the quality wasn't that great on a VHS tape, but I would look through the TV guide and I would seek out movies that sounded cool. I would usually look for the rated R movies and what they were rated R for because it showed the rating and like the motion picture rating and the description of the movie. So I'd see something like Pumpkinhead. That looks cool. That's playing at Cinemax at like 1:30 in the morning. Cool. It's rated R. It's got graphic violence and language. And 11-year-old me is like, fuck yeah. So I'd set my VCR to record it. And then I'd find a couple of other movies. So I'd like set my reminders. And then I would wake up to a mixtape with like Pumpkinhead, Hellraiser, and like Airheads on it. And I'd have it on my VHS tape. And that's where I started discovering all these movies because I would literally do that every night and had this like collection of movies ripped off HBO and Cinemax on my VHS tapes. And I would run out of tapes, and sometimes I'd have to record over them. But that was my first like movie collection was recording shit off the TV. And
Yeah.
I still remember, and a lot of those movies are the movies that I watch over and over now, like Hellraiser 3 and all these cool movies that I still watch all the time today. You know,
Well, my dad still records on VHSs. So
hell yeah,
he
legend.
still he still does the 6 hour thing. He's got
Yeah.
that DVD VHS combo that was like the in the early 2000s that came out. So he still has that. But man,
Could you record things off the TV onto the DVD, or was that? Oh,
no,
that's pretty
the
freaking cool.
VHS. Just I know I
Oh,
don't
you
know
could
about.
just transfer it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know about. I always recorded on those 6 hour tapes, the VHS
Yeah.
ones. So that's what I would record on. And I even remember that reminds me. I actually watched Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I
Hmm.
was like, I know that was like early 2000s, but like not too early. It was almost near mid, I suppose. So
Yeah.
that's like the very tail end days of like VHS. But I remember recording that, and that was like I wasn't into horror movies at all until I was like maybe 16 or 17 years
Hmm.
old. And yeah, I was gonna say I remember the very beginning of that movie with that little girl, just like what's going on, and then and she just attacks both the couple, and then I was like,
Yeah.
yep, and then I turned it off. I remember that, so I was like, nope.
That was just some like movies seem there was something. I mean, everything's more magical when you're younger, but there was some. I felt like for me, like when I watched a movie compared to like a lot of people like around me or a lot of my friends at that time, like I would watch a movie and that would be like that's what I talked about. Like I would watch a movie and it would stick with me, and like that was my. I was never into sports or anything like that, so that they everything felt so like magical, like because I'd record these movies and then I'd want to show them to everybody, and like that's all I wanted to talk about. And there was just something like kind of also dangerous when you had these movies that I probably shouldn't be watching, so it's almost like you're watching them in secret. If your parents come down, you have to like click to MTV or something really quick, and there was just something so I don't know, man. The only word I can think about is just to describe it is just like it was like a magical time of discovering cinema and like formulating a love and a passion for it beyond just like a little bit of forgettable entertainment. It was like, this is going to be like my thing, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean that resonates very strongly with me because like to this day, I mean, fantasies was what I grew up on, fantasy action adventure, that kind of early Lord of the Rings, stuff like that, and Princess Bride, and like I watched that as a kid, and then Pan's Labyrinth later on in life, and things like that. But then
Mhm.
I eventually got into horror now. But yeah, that sense of magical, like surrealistic kind of like, you could talk to your friends on the at the playground or whatever and just be like,
Yeah.
hey, I watched this, and then it's like, oh, we should reenact this, or at least, like, hey,
Yeah.
let me borrow a copy or something. So
Yeah. The most incredible, I think the most, if I had to pinpoint one specific theatrical experience in that time that also helped solidify everything, I don't think I ever remember having a more like emotionally satisfying or just like amazing, like kind of overstimulation of like amazingness was seeing Jurassic Park. When I saw Jurassic Park in the theater, because we went with my parents and saw it multiple times, like there's nothing like being in that era seeing that movie. At that point, there had never been a single thing like it. A little bit with maybe Terminator 2 special effects, action wise, which I was a little younger for, but man, you were probably too young to catch. Did you catch Jurassic Park in the theaters? You were probably like 1 or 2 years old at
yeah,
that time.
I was like a couple,
90.
yeah, I was a couple years old. So I mean, I
Yeah.
watched it kind of right before Lost World came out. I think that came out in
Yeah.
'97. So
Hmm.
I think I was like 5 or 6 when I finally watched Jurassic Park, which I loved
Yeah.
because every kid loves dinosaurs. So, and
Hmm.
then watched the Lost World. So
Yeah.
I wish I saw that original line in the. I mean, I've seen Jurassic Park in the theater since in retro
Hmm.
screenings, but not when it originally came out. I'm jealous of that time.
Yeah. It was fucking crazy, man. I missed that
Yeah.
era.
Well, I was gonna say, thinking about that nostalgic era and then kind of transitioning into like your young adulthood. I mean, I know you had mentioned your collection was like, VHSs, and a lot of those were recorded. Did it eventually turn
Mhm.
into like when the DVD eras came out? Did you like kind of switch your gears that way, or like what happened then?
A little bit before I really wasn't I would only pick up the things like I remember picking up movies here and there as far as like purchasing movies, but I wasn't like full on collecting. I until like later years, I would have a handful of DVDs and things like that, but they were mainly like the bigger titles. I didn't really discover all of these boutique labels until maybe like 2013, 2014, and that's when I really started getting into it. I remember the first like there was some Anchor Bay releases that I picked up from Best Buy, but if you looked at my collection back then, it was probably a fairly like normie collection. I'd have like Reservoir Dogs and things like
Same,
that. But
same.
yeah, yeah. But it was also like before I just wasn't as plugged in, and maybe I was busy doing music and all this other stuff, and I just kind of lost focus on seeking out things. Because when I worked we both talked about working at CD Warehouse earlier. That's when I started. I think that's when I heard about Diabolic DVD, because it to really explode into the physical media space. I feel like there's a lot of like boutique labels are kind of like the video store of our era. So like you discover a lot of stuff like in the video store growing up where it was like the blind buy area, it was the blind rental where you pick
Yeah.
something by the cover of the movie. And that was kind of lost for a little bit. And then once the internet started to pick up and these boutique labels started to happen, then I was able to find out more movies than the movies I had already watched a bunch of times that I just picked up on Blu-ray because I liked Jurassic Park or Speed or Demolition Man, those big titles and things like that. I started once I worked at CD Warehouse, and they would do a lot of their pre-orders for people off Diabolic DVD, and that's when people would come in and order things like weird Asian horror titles like Ebola syndrome or like fucked up movies like Aftermath or all
Hmm.
these weird things. And then I started getting into shock films, gore films, exploitation films, and sort of discovering films rather than just buying movies that I already knew. So that's kind of how I discovered these labels. And then around 2012, 2013, I um, got a couple movies and I noticed that they were both Scream Factory titles, and I was like, oh shit, these are the same like company or whatever. Let me look up this, and then I discovered Scream Factory, and then And that just kind of, your journey was probably similar, where you just start finding all these other labels like Criterion and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like now there's so much shit coming out, you
Like
can't
you
keep
can't
up
keep
with
up.
it.
You can't. No. Well, before we jump into all of that fun, talking about how we can't keep up with stuff, I do want to go back. You had mentioned CD working at CD Warehouse and how it
Hmm.
being really formative in kind of your exploration of like outside, the mainstream stuff. That really
Yeah.
resonates with me because like I was the youngest guy at the store that I worked at, and we were there at the like kind of the tail end of its years. But I remember all the guys, being like, "Oh yeah, I know you to watch Tarantino. I know you watch Fincher, all that kind of stuff." And I
Hmm.
had just been jumping into that, IMDb top 250, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. And then they're like, "All right, well, you should watch In Bruges, and you should
Hmm.
watch, all these different Sony Picture Classic movies, or like, hey, there's Cannibal Holocaust on the shelf, and there's all these different types of weird routes that like I didn't really know if I wanted to go down." Um, at least the latter part, right?
Hmm.
But that's where I discovered more movies. Was working at the record store, but I also love music as well, so that's why I was
Yeah.
there. So
I
weird.
loved working there, man, because like you learn, like people would come in and sell stuff, so you discover movies, like people selling stuff. You'd of course judge people by what they're buying and shit, so that was always fun. And then people coming in and doing their special orders and stuff like that. I remember before I worked there, after I started working there, my it was when I was in this weird phase of like discovering movies that would just shock the shit out of me. And I remember the manager, my manager at the time at CD Warehouse, he's like, dude, like, where do you find these movies? Why do you watch this shit? Because I was like going through like Cannibal Ferox and like all these weird, crazy like exploitation movies. But somebody would come in and buy like, or like come in to sell something or special order one thing, and so I'd Google that movie, and then it would suggest a bunch of other ones. So that CD Warehouse thing was pretty cool because people from all different tastes and genres would come in from everywhere, from like your like grandma looking for like an Elvis record to like a young teen looking for like the most like hip shit, like that's out right now. So it really expanded, like you said, like our taste and what was out there, because you can't know everything. You have to like, everybody's influenced by different people and what they're seeing, so it was a big era of discoverability for me. I
Yeah,
loved working there, man.
me too, man. I was going to say discoverability and like that, just being exposed to a lot of this stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think that's where we get like the leg up on usually when I'm like talking, to maybe like coworkers or something, and then a lot of them may be a little bit older than me, and they're like, "How do you know all this stuff about this one movie?" Was like that's just, I mean, I was exposed to it, and so
Uh-huh.
I just kept going, down that rabbit hole, and that's what I'm interested in. So
Hmm.
it's always funny thinking I haven't really thought about CD Warehouse being kind of that one of that foundational building blocks for like my discovery of
Yeah.
things. But
And the
yeah,
the manager I worked with also was really plugged into the secondary market, which I had no idea about, because somebody would bring something in, I would give them, I don't know, like 75 cents for it or whatever, whether it was a CD or a DVD, because I didn't know about it. And then my manager would look at it and go through the stack and find the value and find those out of print things. And I'm like, why the hell? How are you selling this for $50 or whatever? It's like they don't make it anymore. It's like out of print. That's what we look for. And I had no concept of like the secondary market for out of print movies and CDs, and it's such a strange space, man, for
hmm
all of us. Like, it's just FOMO. It's all about the FOMO, man.
and
You
now
know?
it's evolved to that. I mean, I guess we should jump into that because I mean, here
Yeah.
we are now to like to the Blu-rays and 4Ks and whatnot. I was gonna say, how did that transition happen? Was it just being exposed to like Chris Tuckman and Flick Pick and those kind of people during like the 2010s, like the middle part of
Yeah.
it?
Flick Pick and Cool Duder probably are the first, and then I discovered through him like Pizowl and Christian Hannah Horror. It was before it was Planet CHH. It was Christian Hannah Horror, which is just crazy now that I'm like homies with Christian. It's just such a weird, bizarre turn of events. How I talk to these people all the time now, but that's when I started watching YouTube heavily. Those are the people I discovered, and that's kind of how yeah, I mean that's kind of how I found out about all these different labels and physical media and stuff. And it's crazy because like slipcovers. You know, when you think of collecting, you would never think that like the little pieces of paper that go on your movies are like a big deal. Because I remember when I'd buy movies at like Walmart and stuff back in the day, I think I would just take the slipcover and just throw it away. Like
Yeah.
it was just extra packaging or something. Like, you know, on my like double disc special edition of Super Bad or whatever, I would just take the slipcover off or it would get damaged and fucked up, and I didn't really care. And now it's like, oh, you can sell slipcovers for like $40 on eBay without the movie. It's
Yep.
just such
Without the movie.
a weird space, man. But I love it, and now I've been sucked into all that stuff, and I love physical media so much. Not only just like to watch them, but like as you said, as we talked about discoverability, and also just like creating an archive of movies that may or may not be there in however many years, whether they're pulled from a streaming service or the rights go away and somebody's being greedy with, you know, selling those rights, so it's just like lost in a void. So getting these movies, I feel like for preservation of film, it's like important. You know, I'm so glad this is all, you know, happening, because even if maybe the physical media goes through weird rights issues, there is now like the elements of the film have been preserved, remastered, vaulted with like Vinegar Syndrome or Second Sight or whatever. These films are now preserved and saved. So that's why I think it's important, even for people like Vinegar Syndrome, who are restoring even things like, you know, like Stiff Competition or like,
New York Ninja.
yeah, things like that. I think as silly as it doesn't matter how silly the movies are, it's like film history, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know people have said this multiple times, and I mean, it makes sense. But like, we definitely live in a very great era of physical media in terms of, I mean, we're spoiled in a way because I mean, it was even better than the blockbuster days, right? Um,
It's the biggest it's ever been. There's never been this much physical media coming,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, and that's the thing, that's where the FOMO comes in. And I feel like
Hmm.
that might be the difficult struggle now is I mean, I have a feeling a lot of it has to do with like rights of things,
Hmm.
being in a limited capacity in terms of how long they have this, and then they also have limited you know, amounts of pressings that they can put
Hmm.
out. But you know, that FOMO kicks in, and then you got like, okay, well, you know, look at, you know, something like, you know, Second Sight right here, where you have, you know, films where it's like, okay, we only have 2,000 of these things that we can make.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like, part of me is like, I kind of hate it because it's like, you know, I can't even imagine somebody who's just starting now, like
Hmm.
looking at all the stuff that we have, and they're like, well, I can get some of that, but like,
Yeah.
that's the hard
You know,
part
but
for me.
for the big, I would say for some, it kind of depends on like, okay. One interesting aspect of the space we're in now is, at least from when I started heavily collecting, maybe like 8 years ago, 9 years, when I started really getting back into it. The only thing good, I guess, the positive thing that at least I'm not the only thing good, but one of the positive things about this new wave of crazy physical media is I missed out on a lot of the regular editions. So, like, if you missed out on that really cool, like, Hellraiser Scarlet box, or you missed out on the Donnie Darko Arrow set in the Blu-ray, now there's this whole second wave of re-releases with
That's
4Ks.
that's
So
true. That's a
if
good
you are
point.
jumping in, yeah, you can like pre-order your you know, your Arrow quadrilogy right now, that
The Hellraiser box
quartet
set.
of torment, or yeah, because like now I'm wishing I would have sold that, because I still have my Scarlet box unopened. I could have sold that thing for like $400 or something. It's going for less than a
I
hundred
just have the
dollars now.
normal one.
The normal one, which is a cool set. That's a really cool set.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
but yeah, so like everything's like Night of the Demons are getting, you know, re-released. So if you missed the 88, I think it was 88 films of um Night of the Demons 2, now Scream Factory has it back. And so it's kind of a wave right now, but it is. If you were to jump in right now, it is going to be overwhelming. That's why these channels like ours and everybody else's channels are so helpful to kind of help you sort through
yeah,
the
navigate.
noise. Yeah, because there is so much, you know. But it's cool because there are movies that I had never even heard of that I blind bought. It's like the new video store, or these things. Like I remember well, highlight for me, like a movie that I really found through physical media that I really liked. Oh, and now I'm forgetting the fucking name of the movie. God damn it. It was
Give me a hint.
Fade to Black. Fade to
Oh
Black
yeah,
from
fantastic.
Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah.
That's just that was a movie that I had never heard of that I watched, and I'm like, if I would have seen this movie growing up, this would be one of my favorite movies. Like, you know,
Yeah.
did you
I was
see? Do
gonna
you like that one? Had you
oh
seen that one before it was released?
I did, but like just barely before it was released because I mean,
Hmm.
I think our mutual friend Daniel at Cobwebs, he actually had introduced me to it, and then maybe a couple months later they had announced that it was coming out on Vinegar Syndrome. I'm like, well, great timing because now I can own it. So,
Yeah.
so but yeah, you have a good point. I mean, those blind buys too. I mean, I there's so many blind buys I have. I mean, there's a good number of this collection behind, to the sides of me that I haven't seen. But
Yeah, I know.
I know that I'm excited to go in the future and like watch those things and just discover new things. And for the most part, I 99% of the time I like everything I get. So
Uh-huh. And
um
the thing is, there's like a time, like, let me ask you this. When you are seeing a new movie out, like, do you go and try to stream it before you buy it? Or do you just blind buy it? The thing is, it's so tricky because, like, let's say there's a slate of releases that have like 10 movies, and you have the option to just like, okay, that looks cool. Let me just buy it. Or let me try to stream these and watch them to make sure I like it. But then in your mind, you're like, oh my God, what if like the slipcover sells out? Let me just go ahead and blind buy this. And if I don't like it, I could sell it or whatever, because it's hard to like, because there's a little bit of controversy, I feel like, with the blind buy thing, like people buying movies they've never heard of or never seen. So it's like but it's tough. I don't know if I'm making sense, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I may be more in the former camp where I usually blind buy and I like
So I do too.
I don't really feel like I have as much time because
Yeah.
of how many things are going out, that I have a hard time, like like I'll just use the Severin All the Haunts BR's box set. I'm looking at right that over there, which was one of my favorite sets ever and I still love it.
Hmm.
But
Does it
like
the full core set?
yeah, the full horror set.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Which is like that's my type of horror. Like full horror
Mm.
is like my favorite. But
Oh, cool.
that thing like right there, like of course I've only seen like the Wicker Man, and or like
Uh-huh.
the Witch, or more contemporary stuff and things like that. So that was a complete blind buy, but I already knew the subject a little bit and and I was like, oh, I'm very open to this. And so when I watched it all,
Mhm.
it's like I was having just an absolute blast. So
Yeah.
it just depends. I mean, at the same time, like you kind of at this point, because of how many things are coming out, you have to be a little bit more choosy, or be like,
Yeah.
like, hey, maybe a bunch of martial arts movies are coming out from Arrow or Eureka or 88 Films or something.
Mhm.
Maybe if you're into that stuff, you can blind buy those.
Yeah.
There's varying levels of quality there, but so
Yeah. Well, luckily it's kind of low risk too, because like no matter what, if depending on the label, but like something like Vinegar Syndrome, it is just kind of a guarantee that if you don't like the movie and whatever it sells out or the slipcover goes out, you'll be able to get at least what you paid for it. But most likely you're going to be able to make money off of it if you have to resell it. Not, I don't encourage people to like, scalp shit. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. But like, if you buy something and you don't like it, it's not like you're out $40. You will be able to sell that and get your money back on it. So that's a little bit of a plus to blind buying, because there's such a fervor like for, people buying these movies that people just have to have it. So, there's been movies that like I didn't like, but I didn't feel like I was losing if I, you know, was able to resell it or whatever. So it's such a crazy game, this physical media shit.
yeah, we're in the thicket of it, and I'm sure a lot of people at home watching this right now know exactly what we're talking about. So
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I'm gonna pivot for a second, just to jump back into kind of your journey with these things, and I'm sure you've mentioned some of these as well. But like, what would you say are some of like your favorite films, just like of all time? Like like not like maybe one specifically, but like as you've grown up, or like if they've stayed with you, like what are some things you like
Yeah.
now?
Like as far as like just all time.
Yeah,
Yeah, when it comes to all time, I pretty much have like a core group of movies that may not even be like ones I guess let me just quit trying to overanalyze it. When I go back to the movies that, well, because there's so many eras of my life that
right.
movies that mean something to me, so I have to think about those core movies that I just couldn't live without. And they're kind of more mainstream movies. I think they're kind of classic choices, but like movies I could not live without that are like ingrained in my DNA. Tarantino is my all-time favorite filmmaker. I love his stuff. That's such a common choice, but I feel like there's a reason for it. His movies are timeless, and he just has a flawless filmography in my opinion. So any Tarantino movie, but True Romance is one of my favorite movies that I could not live without. Shawshank Redemption is a movie that I could watch over and over and over again. The Shining is my favorite horror movie of all time. I love that movie. I could watch that 1,000 times. Princess Bride is a movie that I just love so much. I don't know if I already said Stand By Me.
No, yeah,
Stand By Me, yeah, I love that movie. I like movies that kind of, when I want to watch something, I watch a lot of stupid, dumbass movies all the time that I love, like those trauma films and Eli Roth's Hostel and Cabin Fever. Those are some of my favorite films of all time. But the movies that really hit me tend to have like a dramatic edge to them that really like tugs at my soul, something like Mystic River, or I love Darabont stuff and stuff that has a really strong emotional center to it that kind of has a sad thing about it that rips your heart out are the movies that stick with me the most personally. I love Forrest Gump and all these type of movies that kind of like rip my heart out, you know?
yeah. The melancholic feeling is very strong. I love the
Yeah.
that ones that are like I was like, oh, this is it was almost a little bit. I mean, maybe nostalgic is the wrong word, but like like you have some happy moments with these things, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden your heart gets ripped out. So,
There's a catharsis to those type of movies, you know?
oh yeah, and
I think that's why I revisit them.
yeah, and you get more of an understanding of like just I don't know, like you connect more with it, so it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll still have fun with all those those horror movies, and that's the route I'm in now. Because for me, it took me a while to get into horror movies because I would
Mm,
watch things like The Witch or some modern stuff, and then eventually would go. I had just recently watched all the Friday the 13th movies for the first time. I had
yeah.
seen the first and like the second and maybe the sixth like randomly
Hmm.
years ago and enjoyed them. But like now I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch these schlocky movies and have a good time. So
Yeah, they're fun. They're just like turn your brain off and have a good time. Are you gravitating more towards like House of the Devil and Black Coat's Daughter and stuff like that?
yeah, that's like that's what I like at my core. If I want to watch horror, I want to
Yeah.
watch that like kind of folky, kind of more satanic like type of
Hmm.
movies. That's the stuff I like. The ones that where there's less is more. I love horror that where it doesn't show anything and
Hmm.
you kind of use your imagination a little bit more. But I like all horror now, so who
Hmm.
knows?
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say among those films you had mentioned, what about like some of or some of your favorite actors and actresses, like kind of in some of those movies, or like that you resonate towards? Like you're like, if this person's in it, I'm probably gonna watch it. Like any of those people.
Yeah, actors are something I whenever I don't know if I tend to be more of a director guy than
Okay,
an actor
you can pivot that way.
like yeah, because sometimes I try to think about there are certain actors that I love, um, but um, but it doesn't sometimes I'm not going to see every movie by every actor all the time. But you know what, an actor that I would say, I'd say Leonardo DiCaprio does not like his trajectory of what he does. I'm pretty much locked in, basically because he works with so many filmmakers that I like. I think certain filmmakers tend to because an actor can come across so differently depending on obviously what kind of project they're in and how they're directed. So when I see Scorsese or Tarantino direct Leonardo DiCaprio, I think good directors can pull performances out of them, but there's Leonardo DiCaprio movies that like I wouldn't be interested in if it's like not an interesting project. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm more of a director, filmmaker, auteur. That's what drives me to select the movies that I see. But because offhand, I mean, there's some actors that I love. Margaret Qualley is an actress that I'm really looking at right now. Mia Goth is great. There's a lot of female actresses right now that I'm finding really, really interesting. Also, Alexander Skarsgård is starting to kind of veer off into some weird genre stuff that I'm
Hmm.
really, really digging. Christopher Abbott is making some really cool choices with things like piercing and the stuff he's doing with Brandon Cronenberg. Um, uh, so I tend to I like those indie actors and I like A-list actors that are kind of doing weird shit. Mark Ruffalo has an interesting filmography. Um, I could probably keep going, but I'll stop. I'll stop there.
I was gonna say I like that take on like following those people who are connected with the director in a way because
Yeah.
it makes sense too because like and weirdly enough I feel like those bigger names, those directors now, I mean, there are some of those people I would say like Ty West is becoming a much bigger deal now, or
Hmm.
like Jordan Peele, for instance, or like
Hmm.
those are those people who are starting to get recognized as like auteurs, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then you have people like Scorsese or Spielberg, and those are names that, like, those are going to immediately drag people to the theaters. Like that's kind
Yes.
of where it shifted. I mean, also going back to the acting thing, it's like you don't see actors, like as much being the drawing point of a thing. It's usually directors is where people are coming to go
Hmm.
see the movie.
Isn't
Um,
that interesting? It's really it's kind of fascinating in a way, like how movie stardom just isn't the same way. And you brought up another interesting point, or I guess we were just kind of talking about it, but because I'm so obsessed with movies, I always talk to people who aren't obsessed with movies and try to find out, like, from a like somebody who doesn't really give a shit about going to see flicks, like they'll make will make comments like, just I don't ever see any good movies out. There's just no good movies. It's like, well,
mhm.
what kind of movies do you like? Or what movies do you like? And they'll mention this and this and this. And then you could suggest to them like movies that they might like. And I say this point to say, if somebody I think a good way to discover movies that you like is to take that one couple movies that you love and find out who directed it. I feel like not enough people pay attention, like cinephiles like us do, but people don't put into context why they're liking a certain film. And I think generally the reason why they like a certain film is the direction that they may not even be paying attention to. And it may be an auteur film. Like, oh, I liked Hereditary. Oh, I like this. Then you probably like Ari Aster, which means maybe you'll like Ty West, which means maybe you'll like, other filmmakers. So I always try to put an emphasis on the filmmaker because I think, that I don't know. I think that's the best way to discover new films that you like because actors kind of just they'll do whatever. Not everybody, but sometimes actors are just trying to look for the next project, and
Yeah.
their whole filmography as a whole may not represent like one genre or style. They're just kind of go along for the ride. The director is where the vision comes from, especially tour directors, writers, and directors. So that's what I gravitate, towards.
Yeah, and it makes sense too, especially as you mentioned, kind of pivoting towards the people who aren't as into this. Like, I mean, everyone who's watching this and all of our friends are we're preaching to our choirs.
Hmm.
But the people that we interact with on the day-to-day basis that we probably see at work or like just friends in our friend groups that aren't as into this stuff, it's like unless my difficult point is like for me, it's like I might mention something because they might I'm the movie guy in the group or something, and they're like, hey, what's out or something. It's like, well, I'm like, well, be specific. Like, tell me what you're into.
Exactly.
Like, tell me what you're into, and then I
Yeah.
can pivot from that and I can figure it out and I can go from there. Because if you just come into this room or something and you're just like, where do I start? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
so that's the
Yeah.
difficult part, I feel like. But
Yeah, 100%. I think even people going to see mainstream movies like Barbie could probably find some cool surrealistic movies that they could discover in the same style. A lot of but the average person just wants to, oh, the new Brad Pitt movie's out, let's go see it. Oh, the new Margot Robbie movie's out. Just go see it. And that's fine. Some people aren't don't you don't have to be obsessed with movies. I guess that's
no.
we just get kind of obsessed on like a molecular level because we're such weirdos, but some people,
Hmm. That's why yeah, I love it. So um well, I think it's interesting that you brought up like, pivoting towards those directors. Do you have any directors in particular like right now that you are like kind of really like eyeing right now? Or like I guess my question would be, because I like to ask this too, like if you could be in somebody's like I guess alive or dead, what director would you like to work with if you were ever like in front of the camera, behind the camera? Like would you work with like a director like in a way?
Yeah, I think I would I think I know pretty well that I would not be able to turn out some kind of dramatic performance. So like when I think about being in a room with like Bobby De Niro and Scorsese trying to film a scene with like up against those guys, I don't even think I would have fun. I would be too nervous and intimidated. I think something that would suit me is put me in a fucking Lloyd Kaufman movie and let me get my guts ripped out by fucking Toxic Avenger, or put me in some silly horror movie to where I can just be goofy and have fun. I feel like that would be my wheelhouse. If I could be in like like some kind of crazy trauma project, that would be my wheelhouse. Some kind of just ridiculous horror comedy,
I love it.
something like that. Because I don't have the dramatic skills to like impress anybody and take me seriously like a being in a Ty West movie. Um, uh, the first part of that question, Ty West is probably the director that's exploded recently. That is one of my after Pearl, or I mean X.
Yeah, the first one
I kind of, yeah,
of the
yeah.
trilogy.
He's a filmmaker that kind of came out of nowhere. That I'm really watching now, but um, yeah, I don't want to go on another tangent here.
Yeah, you're good. You're
I'll
good.
let you move forward.
No, Ty's great though. I mean, I think House of the Devil was the thing I saw before I jumped into everything, and then yeah, X is actually, there's a funny story I have with my friends. A lot of people didn't know about like the after credits, which I thought, I don't know what it was. I had watched the movie, I hadn't heard anything about, like, because it was like opening night or something, and I
Hmm.
remember having a weird suspicion because Marvel's trained us this way now, to like stay, and
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "Ah, I should Google this. Let me look at real quick. Is this gonna happen?" And then like it's like, yes, stay for the ending. I'm like, okay. And
Hmm.
then I was like the first in the friend group. Everyone was talking about the movie. It's like, did you guys see the end, like at the end credits? And then they're like,
Yeah.
what? End credits? It's like, okay,
The Pearl trailer.
yeah,
That the X this whole X Pearl trilogy, along with Terrifier 2, those two projects and those two filmmakers are probably the most excited I've ever been in the theater for a very, very, very long time. When I saw Terrifier 2, I haven't really talked about Damien Leone. It's like I kind of forgot about that shit. Terrifier 2 blew my fucking mind, and it was so incredible to see everybody like that movie did like gangbusters at the box office. To see that many people come to this little weird, gross out, disturbing movie was so incredible. And then the X trilogy, the Pearl trilogy, those two things happening in tandem this year have been so exciting. It's so cool to see that popping off. I cannot wait for Maxine. That's like one of my most anticipated flicks.
yeah. We're gonna go to Hollywood this time, so I'm
Hell yeah, I'm ready,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Give me all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other crazy thing about that, at least in that particular trilogy, is like you don't know what's going to happen next. Like you have no
Uh-huh.
idea like where it's going to pivot to. So
Yeah, because I actually went like the House of the Devil stuff and Innkeepers and all that stuff.
yeah,
I hadn't seen all of that until I had seen Cabin Fever 2. But which he's like I think he did the Alan Smithy thing or whatever it is on that one. He didn't want his name on it. Maybe it was, but I actually after seeing X, that's when I dove back and started getting in his other filmography. I'm like, this guy's fucking awesome. He like nails this retro style in a way that I haven't seen. Maybe I've seen it in like The Love Witch is another movie that kind of did a really amazing throwback era to like vintage filmmaking that was convincing. But man, those guys are doing some cool shit.
yeah, I'm excited, and I mean, like you had mentioned, like these horror movies have kind of been like, my now I'm just getting pumped about it. So going to the theaters, like I mean even Barbenheimer was like
Hmm.
something that was like an event for a lot of people, and it's I don't know, it's cool to see that people are going back to the theaters to do some things, because
Yeah,
I feel like that has been missed a little bit. I mean, obviously with the pandemic and such, but
yeah. I was kind of hard on Barbie, and going back looking at my Barbie review, I was a little hard on it. I wish I would have mentioned this, and it is really cool just to see what it's done for theater, like theater going, and that's incredible. That like the takeaway from these, like the whole Barbenheimer thing, regardless of what you think about either of those movies, to see this much of an excitement to go to the movie theater is a win for everybody. You
yeah,
know?
absolutely. I mean, it furthers this thing that we love, and and hopefully, like it continues, because obviously I know there's a lot of things going on right now with the guilds, and
Hmm.
strikes and whatnot. So it's rightfully so. It makes sense. So, but yeah, I hopefully we can keep doing this thing that we love, and hopefully this supports it in some way, I suppose.
Hmm.
Um,
100%.
well, this is always like kind of one of the toughest questions I like to ask, but and I know you've had a little bit of time, but if your life was a movie, what would you title it if you had to
Oh,
think
fuck.
about it?
Man, that was this is one I wish I would have thought of. What would the
It-
title be?
yeah. Well, maybe that could be that.
You know what? You know what it would be? I'm gonna go with the thing I say at the end of every single one of my videos, and this may be cheesy, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I always close my videos with "Stay weird and always be yourself." So I would just call my movie "Stay Weird" because I think it represents my philosophy in life, which is just be who you are always. Don't compromise your interest, who you are for anybody. Stay weird. If you're weird, that's okay. You know, everybody's a little weird.
Yeah, I love it.
So that's my answer for that. Be yourself, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, that I feel like I would cheat if I used my. I told you earlier, like I'm not jonesing around is usually what I say
Yeah,
at
dude.
the end. So it's like that weird phrase at the end, like, but it
Uh-huh.
makes sense though. Like, and I, we come up with these things like kind of on our own, and they probably just catch on, and then you just want to start using it as like the thing you want to end every video with.
Yeah, because I think it's like a final message that you want, almost like a tiny little philosophy that relates to how you look at life. I think, like your catchphrase and mine, it kind of relates to how we view the world in a small weird way. So that's the way I view the world, is be yourself. When people walk into my house and see all these crazy like animatronics and lights and shit like that, it's obviously not a normal thing, but it's normal to me, and that's what I like. And if you walk into my house, you'll be able to tell very quickly like what I'm about and who I am, you
Yeah.
know.
No, I love it, and I was going to say I'm jealous of your title. Stay weird. So it's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know. It just popped in my head one day. I don't know. I'm just sitting around being weird, and
Like I guess I'll just use this to my
yeah,
advantage.
it's stuck, man. It's stuck.
Well, kind of as we're kind of gathering all this together, and I'm sure we can go on a couple other rants too, but on some other things. But I mean, I guess encompassing this entire journey for you, as we're currently, because you're still going through it right now. But like, how is this thing we call film and movies and cinema and all that jazz? Um, how does this interact with you in the way you look at the world or how you interact with other people?
As far as like content creating or movies in general,
Movies in general, more so.
Mo- I kind of view my lens, and maybe this is an unhealthy thing. I was actually, it's interesting. I was just talking to my buddy about this last night as we watched the single worst double feature I've ever watched in my life of See No Evil and See No Evil 2 and Contemplating Life.
Some Kane action.
Oh God, Jesus Christ, those fucking movies, man. But we were talking about that, and I kind of view my lens or view things through the lens of like movie. Like I relate everything to movies for some weird reason. It's like my go-to. So any sort of situation, if somebody's talking about something, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this or kind of like that. Um, it's kind of hard to put into words, but I think since movies reflect life, I think movies are one of the most pure things that reflects culture and society at that specific time. No matter what, I think it's the most important thing to record time, actually. If you look at any movie, because we have like well over 100 years of cinema. So if you look at movies from the 50s, it reflects that time. If you look at movies from the 60s, it reflects that. If you look at all the crazy 80s movies with things we wouldn't do or say in movies now, and you can just kind of chronicle the way our society views certain elements of life, whether it be like sexism, the certain language we use, the certain phrases or words we use, all the way up until now where we have like if you look at comedies now and you compare like what was that going on in the 80s, and you watch something like Porky's, and then you watch a movie now that's coming in theaters and it's Barbie. Those movies are so fucking far away from how society is reflected through cinema that it kind of tells you where we are. That we weren't talking about the patriarchy and saying patriarchy 57,000 times in a movie like Porky like we are with Barbie, but I think it kind of reflects where we are today. And I don't necessarily think that there's a bad thing about that. I didn't love Barbie that much, but I think it was just like a script aspect mainly. But I hope that kind of gets around to answering what I'm trying to say. But movies are a reflection of who we are. So when I don't know. That's such a tough question. So do I view my life through the lens of movies? Maybe through like quotes and relating things to certain scenes, but um, on a bigger scale, I think movies just kind of reflect where society is. You know.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
it does, and I was gonna say I like that. I like the personal aspect of, just kind of referencing things left and right. I know a lot of that's how I am. At least,
hmm
I'm having a normal conversation and someone mentions one thing, it's like, oh, it's like that. I remember that one thing from this one thing, and they're like, what?
yeah, like what? I
Like
cannot stop myself from doing that. Like I always relate things to movies. It's just what I do.
it's like, well, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's like that time we were, in the you know, we were we were in like a fire swamp, and we ran into like a rodent of unusual size, and things
Oh
like
yeah,
that
it
happen.
happens every day.
Yeah. Just see a giant like possum is like, oh yeah, it's Princess Bride. Like
And
that's
ROUSs. I saw a big ROUS the other day.
yeah. But yeah, no, I think it also like I think you brought it up brilliantly to looking at the culture at the time to period too, and
Mm,
like and I have a big I'm a big fan of like preserving that obviously with that's why we're into this thing, right? Is to look at that time capsule, hopefully preserving it and not editing it. If anything, like I've always been like I'll just use Star Wars as a good example, right? Because that's the one that a lot of people use. But
mm.
for me, it's like if we could have like a an unedited version of Star Wars with the edited version of Star Wars on the same disc, I'd be happy. You know,
Sure.
and like that's that it's stuff like that. It's like where
Hmm.
it goes beyond movies. Like it's more of like a like hey, it's a history lesson. Like the reason this exists like is because this happened, and
Yeah,
then
that's a really interesting point that you bring up about Star Wars because yes, if you watch the original Star Wars, that is what's pure to that time and pure to that film, especially people who most people watch the original version as their version. And now you literally can't buy the one that doesn't reflect shitty CGI from like the mid 2000s. It's like, you date your movies that way. The movies date us as people. That's a
yeah,
very frustrating aspect of the Star Wars saga. I keep on debating buying that like the those a bootleg copy of the original trilogy because I just want the original goddamn movies.
yeah, and my whole argument is have them both on the same
Have
thing.
them both, yeah.
Yeah.
Just give us both. Goddamn.
So I know that we could probably talk about Star Wars and the alternate versions of all that for a lot of people. I'm sure with there's people who can comment down below and whatnot. But yeah, just thinking about like YouTube and how this space is, what is this, space done for you in terms of like interacting with the medium and with other people? I mean, like I know we kind of covered at the very beginning, but like, do you have any
Yeah.
like extra thoughts on that?
I mean, I could say in a lot of ways, it kind of sounds maybe slightly hyperbolic, but in a lot of ways, since I started doing YouTube, it kind of changed my life in a way by like interacting with this. I have this whole culture outside of like my, I guess you could say, real life where I have genuine friends, some who I've met and some who I haven't, that are part of my life that I talk to every single day, and we interact. And it's interesting to think like, what would I be doing now if I wasn't doing YouTube? Because um, once I started my channel and I met all these people, like YouTube and making videos and creating content and watching movies. I'm watching more movies than ever before. It's kind of changed the whole, at least, trajectory of what I do outside of like work and stuff. So in a lot of ways, this whole YouTube thing has really kind of changed my life for a really good way. I mean, when I got sober and stuff, and obviously I've kept this direction. This is like my new healthy drug that I've gravitated to, and just having conversations. And also, it's opened up a whole area of, and I think the reason it's made such an impact is because now I have so many more people who are just as crazy about talking about movies as I am. So I don't have to be like the movie obsessed weirdo in my group, and I can just kind of exist in a group of other people, like-minded folks. And it's like it's been a whole fucking journey. I've learned how to edit. I've looked into trying to look in maybe a career path involving more media stuff and things like that. It's really kind of changed the my whole outlook about what a hobby can be. You can make a little bit of money, you can meet people, you can network, you can it's I don't know, it's been a whole different trajectory that I never would have seen myself taking except the last 3 years. That's all changed. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
And it goes back to that organic growth,
Hmm.
like it's already something you naturally are driven to, or like
Hmm.
you're already into that kind of space. And then all of a sudden, you have these different opportunities that come about that are just naturally occurring in terms of what you're doing, because I mean it
Yeah.
proliferates that way.
Yeah, 100%, man. For
Yeah.
sure.
And I'm really thankful for this space because I started about I mean we're coming on the 7th year now, about to be, and it's just so strange thinking about how this has changed my life, in a way, and a really positive way too. And I think you hit a lot of those things on the head with the possibilities you can go with it. So
Hmm.
It's I mean it for the most part I think it's a like 99% of it is very positive. So I
Yeah.
don't know about your experience. I don't know if I mean it's not all like sunshine and rainbows, right? But
I don't ever have any issues with any. I know like sometimes people get in like drama with other content creators and stuff like that. I don't have any. I'm pretty much get along with everybody. I'm a super easygoing guy. The only, I mean, there's some when you share your opinions online, there's always going to be people who disagree with you. So yeah, throughout some like negative reviews that I've done or whatever, or like some takes that people didn't like, that I get some shitty comments and people saying some mean stuff. Sure, but like the positive by far outweighs the negative. So sometimes there'll be a negative comment that stings because sometimes like the negative comment, like you can have 100 positive comments and then you get that one negative that sticks with you for the weekend or whatever. But you'll never see half these people and they're just like trolling and unhappy anyway. So you kind of got to push the negative shit out and just focus on the positive stuff and move forward because people aren't going to agree on everything. You just got to push the negative shit out of there. So like you said, that's 99% of it is positive, and there's a small pocket of negativity that you can just try to push out your way, move
yeah,
forward.
no, but I mean you're right about that. This is mostly a space, and the people we've met and interacted with, and in the comment sections too. Like we're all in this thing because we love movies and we like the hobby.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
well, I was going to say, do you have any final thoughts for people at home watching this?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like where you can find me, I mean, I'm talking about movies in all kinds of different ways. So if you're into like, if you're a person who's into like new movies and trailer reactions and movie news and stuff like that, I do all my stuff on Movie Watch Daily. That's a great outlet for new stuff. The Dead Couch, if you like to keep things kind of weird and you're into the physical media aspect of stuff and collecting, Spirit Halloween and things like that, movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, The Dead Couch. And then one of the things I'm most excited about is the Rad Pack that I do with Mel and Garrett. We're getting ready to film an all Return of the Living Dead episode that I'm really excited about. We just did our Extreme Sports episode. I love talking about retro stuff there. So if you're a big fan of retro 80s culture, Corey Feldman, Christian Slater, all the cool kids from the 80s, the Rad Pack is where you can find that stuff. I keep myself spread very thin these days, but and also just watch movies. Watch as many movies as you can. You know, entertain yourself. Be nice to everybody.
Everybody down there, all those links for all those things are down here. I agree. I echo. At least that last message. So I cut you off. So I apologize on that.
No, no, you're good.
Yeah, but I want to say, Justin, thank you so much for joining on this. It's been a blast. Honestly, I feel like we could talk for hours about random stuff. So
Yeah, I'm a ranter, man.
hey, me too. So. Well, I want to say thank you all to everybody who has watched this. I hope you enjoyed Justin's journey and hope to follow him on those different platforms. But also, check us out down in the comment section. Be sure to interact with us there, and we'd love to interact with you. So be sure to give it a like, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.